about. So bow your heads with me so we can pray. Most righteous and eternal Father, I want to thank you so very much for another opportunity of coming inside your presence. It's nothing that we have done that qualifies us to be in your presence, but it's because of your grace and your mercies. Lord, continue to be with each and every one of us here. Please remind the others to come online as soon as possible. Continue to hear and answer our prayers. Bless our thoughts, bless our actions. Please be the speaker this evening. In your name I pray, amen. All right, so I'm going to read something for you, and I want you to listen carefully. And this is for the persons who don't know anything about YPC. What is YPC? Can anybody tell me in the chat what is YPC for those of you who know? Remember, I don't want to be talking to myself. So what is the definition? Tell me the acronym. What is YPC? Shout it out from the rooftops. Don't all type at once. Thank you, Lysandra. Anybody else? Is she correct? All right, so I'm just going to leave it where Lysandra said it. So YPC means Young Professional Club. Now, this was born at the Johnstown SDA Church in Kingston, Jamaica, and it's an initiative to target special groups, special age groups ranging from ages 21 to 40. Now, this group rose due to the need to retain and engage post-college years individuals, so persons who just left college, as well as to serve the needs of individuals to hone their skills and actively find their unique gifts. The goal is to empower these individuals. And while we're empowering them, we want to ensure that they're learning and they're growing professionally. They're learning about God and they're growing professionally. And the aim is to just foster and to maintain a living connection with God. And I'm sure, as most of us here, if we're Christians, that should be our singular aim. All right? So just to give you a brief synopsis of what we are all about. I mean, Sister Shana, if you want to just slip in and share what you think, if I left off anything, that would be good. But if not, we can just jump right in to, well, I think I welcomed everybody. If you're not feeling welcome, just raise your hand in the chat or just raise your hand because I'm supposed to be welcoming you now. But let me know if you're not welcomed. Let me do the honor once more because I don't want to be talking by myself and anybody malicing me because I didn't welcome you properly. Amen, Sister Shana? All right. So because there's no raising of hands in the chat, I'm going to go right to, and I know that some persons came on because we started off with 7 persons, now we're at 11 persons. And I just want to welcome you. For those who were not there when I welcomed before, welcome and thanks for coming. So I'm going to turn over now to a devotional, a short devotional with Sister Shana. You can timer, it's supposed to be 7 minutes, but please think about the words and think about what is going to be said. All right?
All right. I'm getting some feedback. Let me see if I can. All right, is that better now? All right, great. All right, so this evening's devotion is really focused on the new year. A lot of us have started the new year with big plans as to like what we'd like to do. So this is just a quick devotional, very short, about the bigger perspective of how to get the most out of this year. So the scriptural focus is Deuteronomy 3 verse 27. It's from this book called daily guidepost is actually the 1990 edition. So this is very, very old. There's a much newer edition every year it's released, but it's from the 1991 and it's pretty good. So my mom has held on to it and I've held on to it very nicely for her as well. All right, so the scriptural focus is Deuteronomy 3, verse 27. And it says, lift up thine eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward. That's Deuteronomy 3, verse 27. So the author of this particular devotional is Sue Monk Kidd. And she says, during my one and only cruise, I saw Peanuts. I saw Peanuts cartoon posted on the ship bulletin board. It pictured Charlie Brown and Lucy on a cruise ship. As they stand on deck, Lucy says, life is like this cruise ship, Charlie Brown. Some people take their deck chairs to the front of the ship so they can see where they're going. Other people take their deck chairs to the back of the ship so they can see where they've been. What kind of person are you, Charlie Brown? He answers. I'm the kind of person who can't get my deck chair open. I smiled, she says. For it seemed to me Lucy was right. Some folks are future-oriented, focusing on the possibilities of tomorrow. Other people are past-oriented, focusing on the experiences of yesterday. And some, like Charlie Brown, never seem to look in either direction. What kind of person am I wondered. I recall the first day on board, I'd sat in a deck chair at the back of the ship. The next day, I'd sat in one at the front. And actually, neither of them really suited me. One view without the other offered a limited perspective. The third day, though, I discovered a small deck at the top of the ship, which offered a vision of the entire horizon. I could see where I'd been and where I was going, and this was the best view of all. On this second day, or as we ponder this new year, why not take your chair to the top of the ship for a glimpse of the whole horizon? Remember where you've been, learn from it, and give thanks. But then also reach for where you want to go. Challenge yourself and take hope. And the prayer for this particular devotional is very simple. It says, Lord, as at the launch of this new year, help me to achieve a wider perspective by looking both at the waters I have traveled and the waters I have yet to cross. So this is a really beautiful devotional, encouraging us to not just focus on what is in the past or what's in the future, but to ask for that, that wider perspective and that vision to be able to appreciate everything and allow God to really launch us as He wants it into this new year. So I hope you have been encouraged by this very, very short devotional.
Thank you so very much, Auntie Shana. That was very good. I hope that is the prayer of everybody here. It is certainly mine. And I'm going to borrow from the words that Sister Shana enjoy using. This is a no judgmental zone. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat and it will be observed afterwards, right? And we're going to be going straight into our feature as custom. And Fiona is going to be taking charge of that. This feature is called the professional tip or the workplace professional tip. All right, so Fiona.
All right, thank you very much, Danielle. Can I be allowed to share my screen, please?
Sure, give me a second.
Okay, and let me know when you can see my screen.
Right.
Hold on.
You should be able to. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. No question is? Come on, help me somebody. No question is? I think you're supposed to be able to unmute, right? Let me check. No question is foolish or stupid. All right.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. All right, so professional tips for the workplace. Today, I'll be sharing 2 tips. First tip is to stay above the line. And we know that from the Bible that a soft answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up anger. So I want to say stay above the line. And it's important what's above the line, because when you're in the workplace or in any circle generally, you're faced with problems. So to stay above the line, you should notice if you're going to start to react. So you see that there is a problem and you're having a conversation with someone and you see there's a problem. If you notice that you're starting to react, you need to pause. You need to calm down. You need to relax, and then you move into problem solving. You don't want to go beyond the line, lose your control. You don't want to be reactive. You don't want to start defending yourself, even attack, blaming people, insulting people. That's where the problem gets worse. So you want to stay above the line and get problems solved. Second tip is practice your manners. This one seems very basic, should be so natural. When you go to a place, you say good morning when you see someone. Please, excuse me, thank you, you're welcome, sorry. And these are so basic, but they go a long way to show professionalism. And when you're polite, it's basically an antidote for rudeness. So someone may be rude to you, but again, being above the line. So it kind of comes back in. You being polite, that's kind of a solution to that. And sometimes just taking the time out, holding the door for someone, offering help. So this goes a long way, just showing respect for each other. I just want to remind everyone to never forget, whatever you do, you eat, you drink, you go to work, you're copying a paper, whatever your job is, do it all for the glory of God. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona.
Mm-hmm.
Was well put together. I am sure the others enjoyed. And I never look at it like that, staying above the line. Always here, if you have your rights, don't give it away. I've always here, yes, have manners. You might have the right and give it away. But thank you for that. Yesterday was an interesting presentation by Pastor Dr. Merrick Walker. And I'm sure it was a very informative presentation. And I'm sure nobody regretted because we got the chance to find out what our gifts are. And today is going to be another one, I'm sure. And I'm going to leave this great task for Sister Shanna to introduce this evening's speaker or presenter, because I cannot do it as good as her. So Sister Shanna, please take the floor.
I think you could do just a great job, Daniel. But anywho, I take the task to introduce Professor Hendel Butoy, who's with us, and we're very happy that he has taken the time to come and to share with us from his wealth of experience. Now, Professor Hendel Butoy is a former animator and director for Disney feature animation. He has worked on films such as Fantasia 2000, Rescuers Down Under, and The Fox and the Hound. In 2003, Professor Butoy accepted an invitation to teach animation at the School of Visual Art and Design at the Southern Adventist University. He tries to give students the same experience he desired as a student, and that is the opportunity to interact with experienced instructors who excel in their profession and believe in developing their skills to be used as a testimony to their faith in God. He believes all talent is given, all talent, wonderfully just complementing what we learned yesterday. All talent is given to us to be developed through service for others as we communicate something of the love of God. Professor Butoy is married to Menjet, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Menjet Jumiad Butoy. You can correct me, Professor, at any point, from the Philippines, and they have two lovely daughters, adult children, Jadel and Cindy. As I said before, I know he has something big in store for us, and he has a word for us, and encouragement from his wealth of experience. So I ask that if you are distracted, whatever you have, just put it away and just give him your undivided attention. All right? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Shauna. It's the first time we got to see each other. We've been talking through email, I think,
Yes,
since December sometime, maybe a little sooner. But thank you for having me here, and it's an honor understanding what you are all about. And I think it's a great thing because I am around young people all the time. I'm with college students who are wanting to be professionals, and they go to a Seventh-day Adventist Christian University, where the goal there is to not just teach them a craft or a skill, but to also try to ground them in their faith, because when we go out into the world, it's an opportunity for us to share that faith. So I welcome the opportunity to speak with you and to talk with you as well. I suppose I'll say a little bit about myself, because people are always interested in that. They're interested in the things that I did and kind of what it was like to be in a place like that. I know with my own students, it's like that's their dream job, is to arrive at a major studio like that and work on films and create stories and make them come to life. And sometimes they'll even ask me, "Why'd you leave that? That's you were at where we want to get to, and so what made you leave?" So I'll address a little bit of that maybe later on as we go along. So I will do a PowerPoint presentation with it that I prepared. So let me get it up here and I'll share the screen. Okay, so if I can have a thumbs up from somebody, so I know that the screen is on.
Yes, we're seeing your screen.
Okay, real good. All right, so I'm going to entitle this talk, Art and Faith, from my own perspective. And as I go along, I won't be looking at the chat, so I assume somebody will watch that for me and flag all the questions after the fact, and then you can have questions for me once I'm completed. But let me just start with where I was. Yes, this is me way back when I was at the Disney studio as an animator. I was working on the 2D hand-drawn animation at the time, because there was no such thing as computer animation at that time. I was at Disney from the 1980s through the 1990s. And I left there to come to Southern in 2003. So I was there for about 24 years. And the way that I got there is ever since I was 12 years old is I sort of knew I wanted to be an animator. I grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist Christian home, and I had access to Bible story books that my parents got us, but I would never read them. I would just look at the pictures because pictures is what spoke to me. Later on in life, I did a lot of reading, and I enjoy reading quite a bit. But early in life, it was all about visual stuff. And at the same time, being in a Seventh-day Adventist Christian home, I had very devout parents, especially my father, who had been a refugee from the communist country of Romania and had escaped the communist regime there. So his faith was very strong as he left that and saw God's hand in it, so that when he raised his family, he always kept the Lord first in our home. And so I grew up learning about Bible stories and that kind of thing, where my father would tell stories and act them out for me next to our bed with my siblings. And so I had this interest in listening to good stories as well as drawing. And in my young life, though I did not articulate it as well as I can today, I knew that I sensed that there was something unique about visuals and a really good message. And I was hearing really good messages from my father from these great stories. And I was enjoying looking at pictures and drawing them. And I also saw animation, and I saw how it would come to life. And so in my young mind, I thought I'd love to see the combination of these things come together and be a part of it and all. And so later on, I had the opportunity to go to the California Institute of the Arts, which was a school that at that time was the only school in the entire world that was teaching animation. And the way that I found out about that school was from another Seventh-day Adventist student who was attending that school and had seen a little piece of artwork that I did and asked me if I would be interested in that. And so I ended up going there. That school was taught by Disney veterans. They were the original Disney artists that had begun with Walt Disney. And they were trying to train a new generation of young artists because they were all retiring or dying out, and they had to pass on the baton. So I was sort of at the right place at the right time. I sort of see it that way. But I feel as if God had led me there at that point, because I did go into it prayerfully. I did ask that if God would have me in this industry and be a part of this, that he would open the door for me. I would pray about this at school. And I would pray about it even after I got to work. At the end of every project, I would continually ask the Lord, do you want me to continue to be here? If so, continue to open the doors for me. So long story short, I had a job offer out of school to go to work. I didn't have to search for it. It came to me. So I figured that was God opening the door. I didn't have to go ask for it. It was offered to me. And so as I then went to the studio, I worked on at every level that an artist could work at the studio, starting at the very bottom, being an assistant, being an in-betweener. An in-betweener is an artist who draws who draws characters in between the animator's main keys. An animator does keys like this side and then this side. Animator will draw that. And somebody else would have to fill in the stuff that goes in between. Well, that was the in-betweener. And so that's the first level to come in, is that you fill in the drawings. And then you get to do assisting work, which is you take some of the animator's extremes and you might put, the animator will do this one, and then the assistant will put one up here. And the in-betweener's got to put the stuff in between there. So that was the hand-drawn method, and they don't do that any longer. Now the animator just does this and this in the computer, and the computer fills in the in-betweens. Or the animator will put the, whatever the extremes are or the keys are, and the computer will fill in the in-betweens. But that's what I was doing there. And then I did continue to advance from that to an animator, to a supervising animator, and then also had the privilege to direct on a couple of Disney's movies. All this time, at the same time, being a Christian and being a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. And my peers knew about it. My supervisors knew about it, my producers and such. And so I'll speak a little bit on that as we move forward. But let me just go very quickly over some of the things that I did so that if you have questions about specific productions and what went on there, I might be able to tell you a little bit about it. So Fox and the Hound was one of them. I was mainly responsible for doing the Fox when it was a little Fox and adult. Now, let me just say an animator is like an actor in a movie. You are cast to do a certain character, but you don't do that character throughout the entire movie because an animator, it takes many animators to do this thing because it takes a lot of drawings or a lot of keys for a computer to process. And so an animator will get a certain amount of work, a sequence of work in a film that may run around 10 minutes for the entire movie. Okay, so my 10 minutes worth in the Fox and the Hound was primarily with that character there. I did not supervise that character, which meant that I would have to go to the main supervising animator and take my drawings to that animator, and they would check it and correct me on things, and then I would go back and work on it. The next movie that I worked on was called The Black Cauldron. Not a well-known film, but it had this little character in it called Gurgi, and I enjoyed this character because he's very lively and bouncy and always like to take food from people and eat it. So it's kind of a fun character to work on. I did supervise this character. So in this one here, they gave it to me to supervise and to design. So animators would come to me and I would do drawings for them. The next movie that I was working on was called The Adventures of the Great Mouse Detective. This is sort of a Sherlock Holmes-like story done in the late 1980s. This movie was the first Disney film that was completely done by a new generation of animators. So the movies that came before this that I just showed you, like Black Cauldron and Fox and the Hound and the films before that, there was always some original Disney veteran that was working on that film. And they were training the younger generation to come up and start to take over. And this is the first one where the younger generation had the entire movie all to themselves. It was had a good acclaim, and it was very successful. And so it gave the young generation of that time confidence that we could carry on what the original generation at Disney had done. So in this film, I was responsible for supervising a couple sequences in the movie, which meant that I had animators that worked with me to do this character, which is Basil, which is a Sherlock Holmes character, and his sidekick, Dawson, which was the other little chubby mouse. Everything was in the mouse world in this film. The next film that I was working on is called Oliver and Company. This was also in the late 1980s. And I also supervised several sequences with this where I had several animators that worked under me and I distributed the work for them. And we all reported to the director as we do the work. And I was mainly responsible for the design and the animation of a little Chihuahua character called Tito. And I did some of the character Oliver, the little kitten there as well. I was also involved with Rescuers Down Under, where I directed this movie. It was a sequel. It was one that the studio had wanted to do from the original Rescuers. And it mainly had to do with a boy who befriends an eagle, but is kidnapped by a poacher. And then these two little mice have to go and rescue them. And so one of the things I enjoyed about this movie is that they sent us to Australia to do actual on-site exploration of some of the things that we're going to show in the movie. So that's kind of fun when they do that kind of thing. And so we have good memories on that. I was also involved with Fantasia 2000, which was a continuation of Walt Disney's original Fantasia that was done in the 1940s. Walt Disney's original intent was to create an ongoing film that would never cease to grow. It would replace old pieces with new pieces. Now, when Walt Disney died, that idea died with him. However, Roy Disney's nephew so Walt Disney's nephew, Roy Disney, wanted to resurrect that idea, and he did for one picture. They haven't continued to do this, but they did it for this one picture. And so I was responsible here for directing a couple of the sequences that had to do with some flying whales and with a Hans Christian Andersen story about a tin soldier and a toy ballerina. So I'll come back to this a little bit because of some experiences I had here. And then the last thing that I was really heavily involved with is a theme park attraction that you could go to Disney World today and see. And I believe they have it in other parts. I think they have it in all the Disney parks, like in California and Tokyo and Hong Kong and all. They have this attraction where you go in, you sit down, you put on 3D glasses, and these characters move around. They come out of the screen at you, and they inside of the theater, they'll sprinkle water on the people so they think they're getting splashed with water and that kind of thing. They blow air on you, so they call it the 4D effect. So you feel like you're seeing something in 3 dimensions, and you're feeling the effect of the environment. And so it's a little 10-minute piece, but it was a lot of fun to do. And so I was involved in working on that. That was around 2003 when I got the call to come to Southern. And I'll get into Southern's little thing here in a bit. I'm going to stop my screen share for just a moment. So I just don't keep it here on the blank screen, and you can just see me. I just want to talk about having been there at the studio, what it was like to be a Christian and an SDA Christian also in an environment like that, and maybe also answer some questions that some people have, because I've had many people come ask me, do they put this and that in their films? Do they put subliminal type stuff in their films and that kind of thing? But let me just first say is that my peers, the people that I worked with directly, we went to school together. We were at California Institute of the Arts, so many of us went on to work together at Disney. And the one thing I would say about that is, whoever you are with when you are being educated in the field that you're going with, be nice, be kind to them, be courteous to them, because you may very well be working together someday. And the relationships that you establish before you're a professional will carry over into that professional realm. So always use those Christian graces to establish rapport and good relationships with people, those who are believers and non-believers, because then it'll give you influence when you are in that role with them. So I would hang out with my friends, but they would notice something about me. I didn't drink when they would go out drinking, and I didn't use the kind of language that they would use. And they noticed that I wouldn't eat certain things that they would eat. And they knew that I would never go to things when they would want to do things on the Sabbath. And so this would raise questions, and it would give me opportunity to talk about my faith without being overt about it. That meant that what it meant is that you would be watched, because especially from a secular point of view, they always wanted to see, does a Christian really live up to the things that they claim? And if you would just slip up a little bit, boy, did they catch you on it. And so you had to constantly ask that God would be with you to always be the right example, right influence for him. But it did lead to some times where, just out of the blue, you never know when this would happen, but because they would know who you are, suddenly a topic would come up that would be spiritual in nature. It would just come out of nowhere. And as a Christian, if you are prepared, if you're well grounded, you will not always know exactly what to say at those moments, but you will know that you will pray at that moment. You'll say, Lord, this opportunity, what can I say? I have no idea to say. Only you can speak through me. And so you give yourself over at points and at times like that, and you never know how the Lord is going to lead and whether or not he's planting a seed. You don't try to convert somebody. You don't try to change anybody. You just plant the seed that the Lord will cause to grow and bring to fruition someday. What you want to do is just be walking with the Lord, so that you are in a position where you can be used by him in times like that. So that was sort of my relationship with my peers there. My relationship with the company as a corporation was that they respected me pretty much in everything. When I first arrived there and I talked to the production manager and producer, no, I said, you know, I won't be able to work on Saturdays because that's I believe that to be the Sabbath and such. And they didn't have an issue with it. Whenever a company like this, towards the end of a production, things get very hectic. They got to finish it. There's deadlines, and they ask people to work overtime. And they will ask people mainly to work on Saturdays because that's work day for everybody, and Sunday's the day off. And so, but because I was clear at the very, very beginning when I first came in, before the crunch time, before the busy time, that I was clear that this was my faith, and I could not work on this day. They were okay with that. And then when the crunch time came and they knew that, then they allowed me to take the Sabbath off. And I would say, I'll be more than happy to come in and work on Sunday, even if nobody's around. I will do that. I'll make up for anything that, you know, other people are doing. And so they were good with that as well. Sometimes there were things that were matter of conscience. There were not, you know, as a Christian, there may not be always things that you will want to be involved with as a matter of conscience. On one production, I was asked to animate some characters that happened to be witches. And I didn't like the way that those were being presented because it was not it was in a light that was favorable for witches. And that disturbed me because, you know, this has to do with spiritualism and the occult and all that kind of thing. And I was very young at that time, and I didn't know what to expect of it, but I just knew I couldn't work on this with with any peace of mind. So I told my director I could, but I couldn't tell the director why I couldn't work on it. I just say, I don't want to do this. I just don't feel it. And my director, you know, who liked me and wanted me to work on it, he said, well, I don't know what to do with you. I guess we'll just have to talk with the main studio head and see what's going on here. And so I went there and talked to him about it and explained the same situation, and was pleasantly surprised to discover that he was also a Christian. And so he identified with me to a degree, but he said, you know, we don't want to lose you. We want you to go anywhere, but so we're going to find something else for you to do, which they did. So the point in that is this: I knew I was in a position that when I said something that disturbed my conscience, I might lose my job. And if I were to lose my job, what would that mean? I would lose my career. Perhaps I would, you know, start over and go somewhere else. But I remember being at school and at Cal Arts, when I would pray about this, I would say, Lord, if you close the door for me, let me gladly turn to wherever you would have me go. And if the Lord was bringing me to a test here for that to happen, I had to abide by what I had said. And I felt that way at that point. I thought, well, maybe I was only supposed to be here at the studio for, 3 years. I've been here 3 years and that's it. And now the Lord wants me to go somewhere else. And as long as he's got a place for me to serve him somewhere, I'll be happy with that. And so with that kind of an attitude then, and then expressing this, I just expected the worst, but surprisingly, it didn't happen as I expected. I was put on something else that I enjoyed doing, and continued working. So that is my, I guess, from that experience, I would just say, take from that what you can see in it, is that if you trust in the Lord that he is leading you and you stand up for something but you know that you do it tactfully and you do it courteously, that you might be surprised how the Lord leads you, and you might be surprised how people react. Sometimes people value the fact that you stand for something, even though they may disagree with you, because you have some kind of foundation that you are basing things on, And sometimes that's hard to find in people. So that's my relationship with my peers and with the company. And I said that, at times there would be witness opportunities. On Fantasia 2000, I was involved with Roy Disney. And at one point, we were in his private plane going to find a composer, a conductor who's going to conduct the orchestra for the film on Fantasia 2000. And I talked to my producer and told him, we're going to be traveling on the Sabbath, and I would really rather be in church on Sabbath because that's the day I believe that I need to be honoring God as my creator and my maker. And my producer talked to Roy Disney, and on the plane, Roy Disney decided that we would land. We were actually in Europe. We were going to fly back into to the United States. He decided to land the plane in Spain so that I could go to church on the Sabbath. And so it was very kind of him, very gracious of him. No religious background. I mean, he has a Catholic background, but he himself was not devout. But when they value you and when they like the work that you do, they will go out of their way to help you. So I remember though talking with Roy about it and just trying to explain why I believe the way that I believe, and I just thought that maybe the Lord will plant a seed here in the heart of this studio executive, and who knows where it might lead. I don't know where it led in his personal life. He passed away after I left Disney, and I don't know where it took him. But again, the Lord was there to plant the seed. Other experiences I could talk about, I'll just share one more here. I told you about the trip they sent us once to Australia to do on-site research. And I was there with my producer, my director, head of story. We were co-directing, so there were two of us, our art director as well, and our guide to the Outback. And they all knew that I was Christian, something I was Christian, and there's I don't want to get into the story, but in Australia there was this Seventh-day Adventist young lady that was accused of killing her child. That was actually dragged away from a child was dragged away from her tent once by a dingo, which is an Australian dog. And she was accused of killing her child when it had actually been taken away by this dog at night. And her trial went on for years and years and years. And she was a Seventh-day Adventist. And people began all kinds of rumors about Seventh-day Adventists, how they sacrificed their children, all that kind of thing. They didn't believe her, the poor thing, until one day she was finally acquitted. And at the time of her acquittal was at the time that I was there in Australia, where the judge was acquitting her because she was actually found out that she was, she was okay. She was innocent and all that kind of stuff. But I remember our guide was telling us all about this, and how she was a Seventh-day Adventist, and I was sitting there in the car, well, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. He's talking about, this kind of thing. So I was able to then, speak up and say, hey, well, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and nobody that I know of has ever sacrificed children in my church. But that was, that kind of cultural thing. I never heard about this. This was happening on the other side of the world, and suddenly I was there. And so now you have a chance to say something. But I remember being out in the Outback with this guide and with my other producer and director and such. And we were riding in the pitch black of night. And I said, hey, everybody, it's pitch black, stop for a second. You got to stop. There's something I want to see. We stopped the car and I said, turn off all the lights, turn off the lights. And we got out of the car and there's nothing from horizon to horizon. It was like 100 miles from civilization. And so there's nothing to see but stars in the sky on a moonless night. Now, I don't know where all of you are at, but where I'm at, there's so much light pollution that we hardly see any stars at night anywhere. And same thing with my coworkers. And so when we got out of the car and saw the Milky Way and all the stars in the sky, we were all in awe of the heavens and of the glory of God. But none of them were believers. However, I'll never remember the head of story, my head of story on this film, saying to the entire group there, he's saying, Now I know, Hendel, why you believe the way you believe. I didn't say anything. All I said is, stop, you guys, let's look at this. Let's look at this. This is fantastic. But again, knowing who I was or where I was coming from, they had this in mind. They sensed the presence of God under the creative work of his hands. They could not, though they were not believers, they could not but admit that they were in the presence of a powerful, awesome being. And they had to confess to somebody who believed in him that we understand why you believe the way that you do. And so those are some samples of some of the witnessing that can go on. But in order for that to happen, you do want to be grounded, and you do want to be walking with the Lord. And in my case, the way that this happened is that I was asked to teach a Sabbath school class, something that I was very hesitant to do. I didn't want to do it. But the person who told me to do it said, I want you to do it because I believe this will be the salvation of your soul. And when I was told that by this elderly lady, I couldn't say no to such a proposition. And so I did, and I never regretted it, because what it did is, even though I was brought up in an Adventist home, yet still, you must still, for yourself, come to know the Lord. I could not ride on the coattails of my father or my mother or of other people that I looked up to. I needed to come to know the Lord for myself on a one-on-one basis in his word and through prayer. And, you know, when you got to get up to lead a lesson, as some of you may well know, you have to prepare. And to prepare means you have to get on your knees and say, Lord, I'll admit I have nothing to say here, and there's nothing that I can do to bring justice to the things of the truth that are on your word. So please, if there's some soul who needs to hear something, please speak to them, but may I be forgotten in anything I say. May it be you and you alone that comes through in the things that are said, things that are done. You put yourself in a position where you don't want anybody to remember you. You only want them to remember the word that God has spoken through you to them. And if you do that, you will see that things happen in the lives of people. That's with studying the word of God. But you can carry that over, that same kind of attitude you can carry over professionally in working with people. And I'll get a little bit into that. Let me just say that in the company, they didn't mind how I lived as a Christian. What they did mind is they didn't want me to put my faith into my work. Okay, if you can understand what I mean. They didn't want me to illustrate my faith in my work, because if they felt that something was too overtly Christian, it would be too narrow. It had too narrow of a market. It would isolate people, and it would discriminate against other people that would believe in the same way. And so they felt that they didn't want to have anything of that nature. And so I had to figure out other ways to do it, covert ways to do it, which is possible. And you can still visually, metaphorically try to do things. People may not always understand it, but the Holy Spirit can still work through that and speak to them. So with that, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. I'm going to show you a small piece of that, small sample of that. Let me go to the share. So I'm going to show a very about a minute of the end of a piece from Fantasia 2000 that I had done. And I'll just say here, as you watch this, I had read a passage from the Spirit of Prophecy that said, for us to do anything extraordinary, the power cannot come from within us, because there's nothing within us to do something righteous. It must come from outside of us and above us. So I took that statement and I tried to create that visually in Fantasia 2000, which used no words. It's simply taking a piece of classical music and building a story around it. And the story that I built around it was about some whales that could fly, a fanciful idea, because the movie had to have these fanciful ideas. But the way that these whales would fly would be when a light shone from outside and above them to call them to do something extraordinary, which was to fly. And so the way that I illustrated the statement that all power to do something extraordinary comes from outside and above us is to show these whales flying. And so the end of that piece takes these whales higher, higher, and higher until they reach into another realm. So that's what we'll see here. Let me run it. I don't know if the sound is coming through or not. All right, so that was the end of that piece. It was a 10-minute segment of the entire movie. And you see these whales go off from the ocean and fly over land, and then they fly over the clouds. But then in the very end here, they're inside of a cloud and they breach the ceiling of that cloud and they come over to another ocean, like another realm of another ocean. And the light that they have been following is right there on the horizon. Now, most people will look at that and they'll say, oh, that's beautiful, you know, and I had people tell me, I had another producer that I worked on later who was not part of that movie, but came and worked on it. And she was an atheist. And she told me, you know, that was a beautiful piece. I don't know what it is about it, but there's something spiritual about that piece. And I said, well, you've tapped into exactly what I was trying to do. What I was trying to say is that if we follow a power that's higher and above us, and I believe that power to be God, that it leads us into something greater. And I was just trying to say that metaphorically and visually there in that piece. Most people don't get it, and it's okay. But when I get a chance to talk about it, then they see it and they get it and they go, oh, that's nice. And again, maybe it's a seed that's being planted somewhere. So let me move on here. In 2003, I went to teach at California Institute of the Arts. I never thought I'd be a teacher. However, I would pray, as I said before, at the end of every project, what the Lord would have me do next. Somehow I got a phone call from Southern Adventist University who was trying to start an animation program in Tennessee that would teach animation to young Adventist students who are interested in art and such. And so I took that call because I felt that, Lord, you're leading me now to something else. And so the opportunity was there. I had to, the way that this prayer was really answered is in talking to my wife, who never wanted us to move or to go anywhere. I knew that would not be something that she would want to do. And so I had to pray and ask, Lord, if this is really what you have me do, we need to be united. There needs to be a consensus, and there must be unity, and we must be one in everything that we decide, whether I stay or whether I go. And in having this discussion with my wife, she said, you know, it's not something I want to do, but if you really feel that the Lord is calling you to this, I will go. And she gave no resistance, as I thought that she would. And I saw that as a signal. The Lord is saying, go. You know, your time is done here. Now you're to be somewhere else to be helping others in other ways. And so I was there at Southern since 2003. I helped develop the curriculum there along with two other professors. And now I'm teaching CG animation, which simply means computer generated animation. And many times some of the things that the students will ask me, as I mentioned you, why'd you leave and such, what I tell them is the reason why I left is only one: prayer. Prayer is why I left, because I was constantly praying that God would tell me what you'd have me do next. It just so happened that around the 2000s, Southern was also praying. Lord, you know, there's students that want to do art and they want to be Christians, and yet we don't have professors to teach them. Where can we go? Can you help us find them? There were professors and there were students that were interested in art that wanted to do it, and they were praying. So I was praying on one side of the country. Other people were praying on the other side of the country. Well, the Lord brought those prayers together. And so that's why I say to students, prayer is what brought me here. If it was just up to me, it probably would not have happened. But because of prayer and being led by the Lord, this is what happens. And I'll tell you, I never regretted it for 1 second, having made the change from what people consider a dream job, but helping others. There's something unique about that. As an artist, working at a major studio where you're doing films, you sort of help people, but you never see it. What I mean by that is you can work on something that can make somebody laugh, it can entertain them, and you might even watch the production with them and watch how they respond to it, and that sort of gives you a good feeling. But nothing compares to actually seeing a person literally in front of you go through a change in learning and acquiring a skill, and then being able to leave and actually find a job and find a place where they can also then be a witness where they're at. Nothing compares with that. And so I've never regretted this change. But let me move on to I'm going to sort of draw to a conclusion here with a talk that I like to give to my students about art in general. And perhaps you can apply this professionally to your own profession. But I like to ask my students, what is the difference between ordinary art and extraordinary art? That ordinary art, or ordinary, the word ordinary in the dictionary simply means no special distinctive features. It's commonplace, standard, whereas extraordinary means beyond what is an ordinary, remarkable, astonishing, phenomenal, exceptional, incredible. Well, what does it take to make one's art extraordinary? Is it skill, technique, experience, talent? Obviously, all those things are involved. But by what standard will we measure something as being extraordinary? Do we go by popularity? By what sells? Does it depend on what is culturally acceptable or appealing? Or is it just based on personal taste? What criteria, what standard do we use to say something is extraordinary? There are some who will say that the answer depends on what your worldview is. And I think there's some truth to this. Worldviews can vary. You can have a secular worldview where God is left out of the picture of everything. You can have a religious worldview. You can have a political worldview. You can have cultural and traditional worldviews. And all these can have some kind of influence on what the answer is to what's extraordinary, right? If we look at a biblical worldview and what that is, basically it comes down to 4 points. God is the creator of all things. Humanity is fallen. Christ provided redemption a way back, and God will make all things new. Now, there's more involved to it than this, but these are fundamental here. The thing about these 4 points from this point of view is that none of this you can find by looking at nature or by just living life and experiencing it. The only way we get these points from this view is acquired by revelation. It comes from the Bible. It comes from God revealing himself to us, these things. Nature speaks of her creator, but doesn't give us the full picture until we actually come to Jesus Christ. But this worldview can then help us to create a standard by which we can measure something extraordinary. And for that, I'd like to give a few illustrations. Illustrations as we look at illustrations. This is a picture of 2 painters painting a painting. The story is that these were Lombards. They were students, disciples of Wycliffe, who was the first one to translate the Bible into the English language in the 12th century, 13th century. And they were out in Europe trying to talk to others about the gospel. This is during the Dark Ages when the Bible was not in the hands of the people and the corruption that was going on in the church. But they could not speak the language in Bohemia because they were English. But they also happened to be artists. So they painted the universal language of pictures, a picture of the Pope with all his pomp and glory, and a picture of Christ, the God of the universe, in peasant clothes, riding humbly on a donkey. Now, the reason why this is significant is because they had to run away for their lives after they painted this picture. However, somebody saw this picture that impressed them and influenced them profoundly. The name of that individual was John Huss. And if you know anything about the Protestant Reformation, you know that Huss was one of the very first foundational figures of this movement. He went back after he saw these pictures and began to look and to study the Bible and to see if these things were so. And he found the corruption of the church and the true nature and forgiveness of Jesus Christ. And the rest is history. The Reformation was born out of that. So what I like to tell students is here God used artists to begin something that influenced the world that is still with us to this day. This is a picture that a woman came to me in church one day and said, "Can you please take this picture and reproduce it for me?" Because I was taking Bible studies from my pastor, and my husband wanted nothing to do with Christianity, nothing to do with God. He'd leave the house whenever the pastor came for me to have studies. And but then the pastor one day left this pamphlet and it had this picture. And my husband came home and he saw this picture and it had a profound influence on him. And he began to ask me questions. When the pastor came, he asked questions. He ended up studying. He was baptized, and now we're both saved by Jesus Christ. Because of this picture, it spoke to this man and he was converted. That is extraordinary. I don't know how many of you heard of Desmond Doss. Desmond Doss, there was a movie made about him recently called Hacksaw Ridge, I believe it was. His is the famous story of the non-combatant soldier who went to war without a gun, but all he did was, as a medic, was rescue people from the battlefield. And at one point, he rescued 75 men when bullets and bombs were exploding all around him because he wanted to save the lives of these individuals, and he would not carry a gun to fight against the enemy. I believe at one point he even helped one of the enemies, if I recall correctly. But anyway, he was decorated with the Medal of Honor by the president. Once he arrived, he was wounded in battle, but not killed. And the testimony that he gave is the reason why I never carried a weapon is that when I was young, I saw a picture, an illustration of Cain who slew his brother Abel. And I vowed that I would never want to be like Cain. And I prayed that God would never let me be violent or destroying that way. For that reason, I never carried a gun. So to me, that is extraordinary. Here's a picture done by an artist that influenced an individual, that had profound influence on saving people. And ultimately, the story was told in a major production movie for others to know. There's another picture by another artist. You may or may not know the name Jack Blanco, who wrote the paraphrase of the Bible, The Clear Word. He was a theologian here at Southern. Well, in one of my discussions with Jack, he once told me that just before he was converted, as he was considering Christianity, he pulled out this book and it had this picture in it of Christ receiving people from all over the world. It didn't matter their rank, their status, their race, their culture, their nationality. His hand was extended to all. And he said, I saw myself in that crowd and that Jesus was receiving me. And because of that, I gave my life over to him. That to me is extraordinary. Here a picture helped to convert an individual that went on to become a theologian and write the clear word. Here's another picture from a film called, I can't remember this film. It's an animated movie, The Prince of Egypt, which is basically the story of Moses and the 10 Commandments. I show it here because in my classes, I ask students, I'd like you to show a picture and share a little bit about what that picture means to you. And I had one student in one of my classes show a picture from this movie and say, this movie is the reason why I'm a Christian. I saw the movie and I was really impressed how God led this man from being a leader in Egypt to leading the children of Israel and then giving him the 10 Commandments. And she was impressed, so impressed by that, that she wanted to learn more. And eventually she became a Christian, and she ended up then deciding to go to Southern to a Christian school. And that to me was extraordinary, to hear that kind of thing, that a movie would do that. And this movie was not produced by a Christian studio. This is a secular studio that decided to make this story because it was a biblical thing and they thought it would have some kind of universal appeal. So they did it for that reason. It was more for the business than for the spirituality of it. Yet some people that were working on it were Christian and they put their whole heart into it. And so God used this. This was extraordinary. One final illustration here. One of our students who went out to Thailand on a mission trip. He took a summer out there and he was able to find a wall to paint a mural up on that wall out in the busy city of Bangkok in Thailand. And you can see the scaffolding that he used. It took him 10 weeks to paint this mural. But basically what he painted was the second coming of Jesus. But the way he painted it was in such a way, he said, I want to paint it in such a way that the Thai people will recognize it or will speak to them. So, the Thai people are into Hinduism mainly. And so he took the style, the artistic style of Hindu paintings, and he reincorporated the second coming into the painting. So you see the angels there, drawn in that style with Jesus on the white horse, which you see is the description in Revelation. You see those being raised from the grave, going up to meet Jesus and the angels greeting them, and those who've rejected Jesus begging for the rocks to fall on them to hide them. And he wrote John 3:16 in the Thai language and also put it up there in English. And so here's the finished mural after 10 weeks of working on it. And this mural is in front of hundreds of people that go by the street all the time and look up at this. Now, we don't know because this student left after 10 weeks and came back here to the United States, but that painting stands there as a witness to the second coming day after day after day, and people see it. Who knows how many people will come up to this student someday and say, it was that painting that made me think about it and look into Christianity, and now I'm here because of what you did there. And that would be extraordinary. So what is it that makes these extraordinary? Is that they are religious in nature? Is it that they're well done, that they are talented, well executed? Is all that there? Well, I want to give you, I would say yes and no, but I would say not completely, because there's one ingredient missing that we haven't pointed out yet, and that we'll find here. These are artistic works that God asked some artists to do. And when he had artists come together to put together pieces of furniture and to design them, to tell the story of redemption, to tell the story of his forgiveness, and then how that one would substitute someday, that they might have forgiveness and have new life, have the light within them through the Holy Spirit, and receive pardon and receive mercy from the mercy seat. That, and that ultimately God dwelling within, that he said, I call by name Bezalel, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and understanding and knowledge and all manner of workmanship, design artistic works. Indeed, I have appointed with him Aholiab. Here's the key. Nothing that these individuals did would have made any difference if they did not have the Spirit of God within them as they did this work. And because they did, down to our day, these things, even though these are not the originals, these are duplicates, yet figuratively we still understand this work, and it still speaks to us to this day of the redemption of Jesus. So a Christ object lesson says learning talents, eloquence, everything natural or acquired endowment may be possessed, But without the presence of the Spirit of God, no heart will be touched, no sinner be won to Christ. If the gifts of the spirits are theirs, the poorest, most ignorant of his disciples will have a power that will tell upon hearts. God makes them the channel for the outworking of the highest influence in the universe. If you go to a desert in Southern California called the Mojave Desert, you can go by parts of it that look like the moon. There's nothing there. However, when you get close to the state of Arizona, you come over a ridge and you'll see something like this. You'll see water out in the middle of the desert, and you'll see greenery all around it. We're told the amount of the blessing that no one can give place in his own heart and life for the stream of God's blessing to flow to others without receiving in himself a rich reward. The hillside and plains that furnish a channel for the mountain stream to reach suffer no loss thereby. That which they give is repaid 100-fold, for the stream that goes singing on its way leaves behind a gift of verdure and fruitfulness. When the earth lies bare and brown under the summer's parching heat, a line of verdure marks the river's course, a witness to the recompense that God's grace imparts to all who give themselves as a channel for its outflowing to the world. This is extraordinary, to see life where there is death. And what's equally extraordinary about it is that God wants to make us channels that his grace can flow through, that we also may have life to impart because it's his life. And that's what spiritual gifts are, that he gives us each gift for the edifying of the body of Christ. This is what Ephesians 4 tells us. I won't take the time to read it here, but I will take the time to read here where it says spiritual gifts, that many may be reached through sacred pictures, illustrating scenes in the life of Christ. By this means, spiritual truths may be vividly imprinted upon the minds, never to be effaced. We hold that it is proper to take advantage of that almost universal love of pictures in the young, to fasten in their minds valuable moral truths, to bind the gospel to their hearts by beautiful imagery illustrating the great moral principles of the Bible. Even so, our Savior illustrated his sacred lessons. And so Jesus says, abide with me. And I think I'm going to end with this one here. He says, abide with me. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, no more can you except you abide with me. And what Jesus was saying is, you cannot, without me, you can do nothing. That is, without me, you can do nothing righteous. You can do nothing extraordinary. So what is it that makes ordinary art? What's the difference between ordinary art and extraordinary art? Anyone can make ordinary art. You can possess the skill to do that anytime. But it is the Holy Spirit that if we open our hearts to receive that Spirit, he will make whatever talents and abilities we have extraordinary, because it will reach out and touch somebody for eternity. And so with that, I want to leave you with that thought and open up the opportunity for questions if anybody would like.
Professor Butoy, that was a very informative presentation. And to be honest, it came at a perfect time. Yesterday, we recognized religious liberty, and I'm impressed to say that I was able to relate to whatever you said this evening, and I'm sure others did as well. And we can allow the message to sink in, the presentation to sink in, but if you have any questions or you are impressed to say something, feel free to do so. I'm seeing in the chat, Uncle Curtis said, I'm inspired to continue in spite of. That's exactly what I was thinking as well. Sister Renita Hufat says, great words of encouragement. Excellent presentation, Professor Butoy. While the others maybe continue to think or digest what was said, I'm going to say this. I have had a lot of experience. I work at one of the media houses in Jamaica, and I have a lot of experience where it comes on to clashing with religious belief and what I'm asked to do. Sometimes it's multiple times of being asked to work on the Saturday, and it's hard, but I like the fact that you said creating ordinary work versus extraordinary work. And you said, you made a point that the director liked you, right? And they can't just replace you if you're good. They'll find something else for you to do. And, you know, I admire that you came out and you shared your story with us. We were able to resonate with. I see Uncle Mark's hand. Uncle Mark, you can go ahead. Can you?
Thank you very much, Danielle. I was I was truly inspired by the presentation for more reasons than one, and I must thank the professor for his inspiration, because I too am a teacher. I teach at a high school, and I have been working with young men, preparing them for external exams. Here in the Caribbean, we do the CXC exams. And, you know, I was telling a group of students how well some of my students do at the end of the exams, because sometimes when we start out, it was rough, because some of them did not understand the concept and everything. But as we get closer to the exam, and I would pray for them, I would encourage them, and at the end of it all of them will pass and get good grades. And even I've had testimonials where students, you know, would say, "Sir, you know, I didn't know I would even get a distinction in the exam, and to see the result that he got, he was thanking me." But I was saying to them that it's not me, but God. And I really, I can identify with what you say. It's not to try to convert anyone, but to live before them, to live that life that if even they are having a challenge, they might remember you might have said something to them that inspired them. And I really, really, really appreciate it. One of the things I want to also highlight about what you said is being on time and being such a quality worker, that even if you are confronted with a situation and you say, "Well, I am unable to do this," they'll truly have to think twice whether to let you go or not, because of the quality person you are, separate and apart from the quality work that you do, the quality person that you are. And I believe that should resonate for all of us here in this meeting. We should be quality persons as well as offer quality work, so that if they should be letting go anyone, they would think twice about letting us go. And if it comes to where we are let go, we know that it is God who is preparing something better down the line. I really thank you very much for the presentation. And as I said, I am inspired to go on. I'm inspired, because I've been teaching for over 20 years now. So, you know, I am inspired to go on, to continue to, by God's grace, inspire these young men that I'm teaching. Thank you very much again.
Thank you for that, Uncle Curtis. In addition to that, Uncle Carlos said in the chat, Jesus chooses the unlearned and equipped them. Look at what we can do when we are empowered by Jesus. And again, I even made notes. It said, good character is of utmost importance, right? And it will take you afar. And I believe Professor Butoy mentioned something to that effect, good character. And then Fiona says, good manners, right? And he said that when they value you, they will go out of their way to make things right with you. They'll keep you. Does anybody have any question for Professor before we do the vote of thanks? Or if you're impressed to say, because I know that Uncle Mark is part. You could hear it in his voice, right?
I'd like to ask a question though. See that you have asked. I'd like to ask a question. And
sure.
The question is, especially now with the transition from, what do you say now, paper animation to computer generated animation, what's required for someone who may be they like the area, because a lot of the students here, they like the area, especially gaming, they like that. But what's required for one to really go into that area, base or otherwise, type of art?
I like to tell people that the computer is just an expensive pencil. Whether you draw or whether you create on the computer, the principles are all the same in terms of understanding design, composition, knowing how to make something move, knowing how to make a character feel like it's thinking. The principles are all the same. The difference is that you have to learn how to navigate inside a computer with the various keys and such to make things happen. Some people have a misconception that on the computer, you just push a button and it does all the work for you, but it doesn't happen that way. The computer needs to be told what to do. And so what you need is you need to learn the principles of animation, the principles of movement. And there's like 14 different principles on that. And then there's also understanding of design and composition to build a shot. And so you can either get some formal training on that. Some of it can be done online. Some of it you can find in various schools. I know that animation is taught all over the world these days. I mean, when I started school, it was only taught in one place out there in California. But there's many places that you can find today of how to learn the various principles. And if you're really interested in CG, I would recommend that you download a program called Blender, Blender. It's a free program, but it's a CG program. And you can dabble in that. You can experiment with it, try various things with it, go online, research the principles of movement and animation and play with it. And then if you have the opportunity to get a formal training on it, then go ahead and do that. What you're wanting to do is you want to build a portfolio that says that you have what it takes to contribute to a production.
All right, I have a question as well. And it's actually, go ahead, Uncle Mark.
Just saying thanks. Thanks very much.
All right, Prof, I have a question as well, and it's actually piggybacking on Uncle Mark's question. It's related to gaming. I was at a conference some time ago, and they mentioned that gaming has billions of users, right? And that's like a rich field for evangelizing, if one could say. How do you feel about persons heading into that field? Because you had mentioned the lollards and the impact of art on individuals. So I know there'll definitely be cautions, but how do you feel about encouraging those of our young people who have that, I guess, inclination or ability to be a part of that, as well as the necessary cautions?
I think, well, just like probably any kind of art, as well as animation, and gaming, you've got to have some creativity in order to make it happen. You need to go into something like that, not as a fan, if you can understand what I'm saying. Sometimes I have students who come to school because they are fans of animation, meaning they enjoy it, but they're not willing to put in the hard work to learn it. They just want to enjoy it. And because they enjoy it, they feel like if they come to school, they're going to get the pleasure of being around animation. But it's still a lot of hard work. And it requires a lot of discipline. And it requires a commitment. You have to say no to a lot of things that you like to do. It's almost like a marriage. You're saying, I'm going to just focus on this one and no other, and give my full attention here to learn this thing. So whether it's animation or gaming or any other discipline in the arts, you have to, first of all, you have to love it, but not just be a fan of it. You also have to love to learn it, and you have to be willing to work hard at it. And when it gets tough, and everything that's great always is tough. When it gets tough, you have to be willing to persevere, not give up. I'll tell you that all the people that are the industry leader today in animation, the industry leaders, many of them I went to school with. We were students. They were not gods of animation, like people talk about them today. They were just ordinary people who loved this art form, and they wanted to work hard, and they got discouraged, but they persevered. They kept going until they learned the thing. And so that's what you have to do in any field. As a Christian, if you're going to go into something like this, and I say this repeatedly, you need to be well-grounded. There are temptations, and you're especially working with people who have no regard for God at all. You can be carried away with that if you are not grounded. But if you are grounded, you can be used by God in those areas. And you can come up with ideas for games that could be wholesome and good and uplifting and not destructive in nature. And so those are some of my thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, so if there's nobody else, I mean, we have been saying a lot of unofficial thank yous because we have really enjoyed the presentation. And I don't want us, when tomorrow comes, we're no longer inspired. This is a lifetime presentation. This is a lifetime message. And I hope and trust that we will go and do what we were planted here to do. And as I said before, all of the thank yous were unofficial. So I'm going to leave the official vote of thanks to Fiona. Fiona, you can take the floor.
Thank you, Danielle. Professor Butoy, on behalf of the Johnstown Seventh-day Adventist Church Young Professionals Club, and everyone here who listened to your presentation, I just want to say thank you for a wonderful presentation. It was truly encouraging and inspiring. We truly appreciated how you shared your experience as an SDA Christian, how you tactfully stood up for your beliefs in conflicting situations. And it's just reassuring to us, your experience, how God still stood out for you when you stood up for him. We want to thank you for reminding us that we should allow God to lead us. We should pray to him so he can guide us in our decisions, and just really letting us know that in whatever field we are in, we can be a witness, and that anything in all our talents, God can make them extraordinary. And we just want to say thank you very much. It was truly interesting and inspiring. Thank you very much, Professor Butoy.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Because we have a little bit more time, I'm just going to say quickly that we did, and Sister Renita is signature and putting her signature on that vote of thanks. She said, well done, Fiona. So you know you spoke for everybody. All right, so as I was saying, in the chat, there's a link that will lead you to our registration forms. If you want to be a part of the body of YPC, aka Young Professionals Club, you will have more access to do a lot of our resources. We are going to be venturing, well, we already started the reading club for persons who are finding it hard to, read. We are teaching persons how to do that. Fiona can tell you more about that. We are going to be working with our mentorship program as well. So persons who want to be mentored, persons who are interested in mentoring can also sign up for that. So as I said before, the link is in the chat. If you're interested, feel free. We're not able to meet as we want to, but there's always Zoom, there's always WhatsApp, and there are various ways for us to reach out to each other and to inspire one another. Sister Shannon, I want you to do the closing prayer. But before you do that, if you have anything you'd like to share, if you were impressed to say, or to do anything, feel free to do that before we close. And before I turn the floor over to Sister Shana again, please be reminded, for those who are still here with us, that we have Sunday night meetings starting at 7 o'clock. So you can come back or you can stay until that time. All right? If I left off anything, feel free. And once again, Professor, thank you. Go ahead, Sister Shana.
All right, so I want to just share some announcements and then share the quote that really resonated with me. And that's something that I'll be really holding on to. So I just want to share that we have 2 meetings coming up again next month. The first one is on the 13th of February. That's the second Saturday night conversations. And then the last Sunday evening in February, the last Sunday evening, that's February 27th, we'll be having our Sunday evening meeting, just like this. So I just want to remind you about that and to keep your eyes open and ears, ready to hear the information that we'll be sharing in the coming weeks. Will we be able, there's a question, Prof. Someone is asking if they'll be able to view the presentation if they so desire. Someone's asking about that. So we will.
Maybe he can share the presentation with you, Auntie Shana, and then we can share the link with them from our Young Professionals Club account.
Okay. Oh, Lasandra will be placed on YouTube.
Lasandra, okay.
Right, great.
Okay,
great.
cool.
All right, so I just wanted to remind you about those 2 events coming up on the 13th, that's the second Saturday night, and the last Sunday in the month. And I really want to join Daniel in thanking Prof and to share the quote. There are many things, I wish I had enough, time to just type all of them, but the one that really resonated with me, it says, put yourself in a position where people not remember you, but remember what God has either given you to say or given you to do. God is the focus, and that is so beautiful. So that is something that I'll be personally taking and internalizing, and that I pray to God that that seed planted by Prof will bear fruit. So at this time, let us bow our heads. Go ahead.
Before you pray, I just want to recognize what Sister Hufat said in the chat. She said invited to all our meetings moving forward.
Yes, sir. I would like to adopt you. Yes. All right.
And I have my own quote, and I'm sure persons as well to moving forward. So
yes. Yes. All right. Thank you. All right. Let us pray. Dear Father, we want to thank you tremendously for the blessing that you've packaged for us this evening. Father, you have used Professor Hendel in such a marvelous way. And we ask, oh God, that the truth, the message, the timely message, which was inspirational, dear God, will take root in our hearts. The seed spread abroad this evening will indeed take root in our hearts, oh God, and will really grow and blossom and to bear fruit for thee. Dear Father, we ask that you continue to bless his ministry. I pray, oh God, that you give him fresh sips from the fountain of life, that as he pours out into his students, pour out into his various communities, pour into his family, that God, you will fill him up, that he'll continue to be a vessel of honor and a mouthpiece for you. Dear Father, we ask that you continue to be with us as a church. This is a timely message for us. We are called to go, and help us, oh God, to look at even unique ways to go of using art if we're so gifted, or to help to support those who are so gifted. So we thank you for hearing our prayer, God, and we ask for forgiveness of sins. We also ask that those who are able and available, that they will join later in the Sunday night meeting that will start very shortly. So we thank you for your presence. We know that you're with us, and that's one of the reasons why this meeting was so extra special, because your Holy Spirit was here with us. So we thank you for hearing again, and we thank you so much for answering. In Jesus' name, amen.
And if